About 2.5 weeks ago now, when we last met together as a class, you got to talk in your groups and work in your groups, and then write individually your answers to questions on Chapter 6 of Hansen, on Christology, specifically the first stage of the study of Christ, Christology, the person of Christ, the nature of Christ. And we did get to go over those questions. So we talked about the historical Jesus, and we talked about the 4 different positions. So you may want to you should refer to this bit of note, or these notes that you'll find on Canvas. We talked about the historical Jesus from the contrasting perspectives of the radical, liberal, existentialist, and moderate position. And the next we talked about the resurrection of Jesus, of Christ, from those same 4 perspectives. But what we did not get to talk about was this last category on the far right, on the notes on the blackboard. Originally, now you have a paper copy converted into a PDF. And this is about Christology per se, in itself, of itself. What about, in general, the nature, the person of Christ? So the radical position, as Hansen tells us, is that Jesus is one of many prophets at best. He may be one of the best prophets, but he's just a prophet, more or less like many others. What about the liberal perspective? This is what Hansen identifies as a low Christology. These Christians, these are Christians, unlike maybe some of the radicals who might not want to take that label as Christian. These Christians say that Jesus was special, specifically that his life and death is a model, an example for all of us. So the way Hansen puts it, Jesus, in terms of the character, the personality, the nature at least he developed, the person he was objective but not unique. It was real, it was true, but at least in theory, other great religious people, examples, leaders, could have achieved or could yet achieve the same kind of status of Jesus in terms of his life and his death being a model. Now, I'm going to criticize Hansen on that in terms of historical theology, because you could say that the birth of this low Christology model or tradition, whole tradition, was with some would say the first maybe modern Christian theologian, the founder of liberal Protestantism, living in Germany, Friedrich Schleiermacher. And what he actually said, and he did get away from a supernatural model of Jesus, that Jesus was supernaturally endowed with superior knowledge or power. But he did say that Jesus, only Jesus, had a unique God consciousness. He had this connection with God that no one else had ever had, no one else did have, no one else will ever have. So he had this unique God consciousness. So that is exactly refutes what Hansen's characterization of a low Christology. And there are other versions of a low Christology, but Schleiermacher's low Christology was of a Jesus who had a unique God consciousness that no one else had. So he was able to lead us to salvation because of his unique connection, his unique relationship with God, his unique consciousness of God. All right, so a correction to Hansen's characterizing of the liberal stream or the low Christology that comes out of it. Next, the existentialist position. Remember, that's all about the subjective. The Christ of faith. What happened to the Christian community? It's what happens to the individual and individual Christians. So, as you might expect, the Christology of the existentialist movement in Christianity is who Jesus is for me. That's what it's all about. If Jesus is significant for me and enables me to trust God, then that's all we should expect from a good Christology. Finally, and as is usually the case, Hansen saves what he considers to be the best for last, and that's the moderate position of a high Christology. So the way he phrases this, and he doesn't exactly get into supernatural things, but he talks about a high Christology in these terms. 1, God is decisively present in Jesus Christ and in no one else. And to go back, you could say the same thing about Schleiermacher and his low Christology, but we won't quibble at this point with that. The second thing, he says, is that Jesus is the unique Son of God, the one and only. Again, we could go back to Schleiermacher. He may not have specifically focused on the term Son of God, but again, Jesus did have a unique God consciousness. But many other liberal Christians would not have as high a low Christology as Schleiermacher did. So those are the two things he mentions, plus, that is Hansen, plus a third thing, that Jesus is present now, that the Spirit of Jesus is supernaturally present. And that may be something that is unique for Hansen's version of the high Christology. So we'll call it quits on that, and next I'll be talking to you with a mini lecture on the Council of Chalcedon and its historic decision on the person, the nature of Christ.